Good morning, friend. Welcome back to Acre Homestead. The landscapers are officially done with their project. Does that mean the landscaping in the garden is done? No, this is just the beginning. But it is out of their hands and it is back in Josh and I's hand, and I cannot wait to walk you around and show you how the landscaping turned out. I already have been researching and planning all of the bulbs, the daffodils, the peonies, the irises, all the things that I want to be planting this fall. But for now, I want to show you what the landscape project finished, and then we're going to go do a full June garden tour as well. So you're going to see the finality of the landscaping and how the garden is looking as of mid-June. I will be sharing before and after photos so you can see where we started if you don't remember, because it has been 4.5 solid months since we started. And so we'll start, and I'm gonna go in the same order that we went in when we did the before video on this whole entire garden plan. Quite a few things were added to this plan. I think just like any big project, as you get into the project, things start getting added to the list, things that you realize you needed that you didn't initially anticipate, like the deer fence. That was not part of the original plans, but now it's in, and I'm so grateful for it because yesterday when I was driving home, there was a deer walking on my driveway. And so it's a blessing that we have that. So I will give you the befores, the afters, and kind of our thought process. And I'm just excited you're here with me, and we have our homestead back. Here we have the before of the front patio deck landscaped area. You can see there was a wooden path that went from the driveway to the front door. There were some kind of retaining wall type blocks from the driveway to the raised bed, and some trees, some rock formations, and some different bushes and things. And so this is what we started with, and I am going to show you what we ended up with. Some of our main goals for this landscaping project was, one, to build a beautiful garden that is going to be a super, hopefully abundant food producing garden for us. But I also wanted to create a welcoming environment for friends and family, and a place where we can host people and it can be super inviting and comfortable. And so that is kind of our goal moving for this project before we even got started. So one thing we wanted to do first was kind of give the curb appeal of the home a little facelift, and that is what we did. Originally, you saw there was the wooden deck that came from the front door out here, and that was a safety hazard, so we had that replaced with this brick walkway, and I love how it turned out. We did do a couple little lights that just create a really inviting environment, especially at night coming up to the front door. And you all know that I like to host dinner parties, and so we wanted something that was going to be super inviting coming into the front door. And this is how the front ended up, with the black door that I think turned out fabulous. I absolutely love this red tree. It is so beautiful. There is a light that shines on it, so at night this red tree glows and it's stunning. And then we went with the dry riverbed so we could have a little bit of a hint to water feature, but not the mess of a water feature. And this is a new tree here. We've got a couple hydrangeas back there and some rhododendrons that were there from the previous owner. When it came to the landscaping plants, I had asked the landscaper to design having like focal point plants, but to leave a lot of space for me to put my own touch on it and put all the bulbs that I want to put in the fall. And it's going to be a process to get all of them. I've been researching some different companies where I can get some bulk prices. You know, I like to buy in bulk. And so when I find those deals, I will share with you when I get them. But I have a lot of plans for continually filling out this bed. From the front of the house, over here on this side of the property, we have the orchard, and we didn't do anything with this orchard. Josh and I actually plan to tear down this tree because it's looking like it is dying and we need to redo this fence, but nothing has happened over there at this point. Those are future plans. But over here is where the previous owner had their garden, and there used to be a big gate right here, and that is now gone. Let me give you a picture of what that looked like. So here is the original fence, and you can see the area that we have taken down plus the area that we have not taken down yet. So now this is what it's looking like today. This area needs some more attention and love, but I am so happy with how the rest of it's turning out. Josh and I are going to take a weekend and we're going to finish tearing down the old deer fence because now we've got our new deer fence. So we put 2 gates here. We put 1 gate here so we can get the tractor in and out of this covered patio. And then we've got this gate here where if I need to drive a truck or something through here, we can drive a truck through this area. Now, when it comes to this garden area, most of it is strawberries that the previous owner planted, and I'm letting those just grow. We've got some blueberry bushes from the previous owner. And then what I planted here is the garlic, and it is thriving, even though it hasn't rained 1 day only, and that was last week, in the last 6.5 weeks. With the lack of rain, they're still growing and they are ready for me to harvest the garlic scapes. This is the flowering head of the garlic plant. So I'm going to do that probably in the next day or two. Here is the soft neck varieties. Now these are starting to yellow a little bit sooner than I would anticipate. We've got 1, 2, 3 leaves that have yellowed, and typically that's when I harvest my garlic. The problem is, it is only mid-June and I normally don't harvest my garlic until July. And part of this, I think, is because there has been no water and they're drying out faster than they should be. So I have not pulled one up yet. They have not come to a big, huge size. I still have half the garlic that I preserved from last year. So if we don't get as big of a harvest this year, I am just grateful we have a harvest at all because we didn't have our garden put in. And so any harvest is better than no harvest. And I do plan to purchase some more seed garlic this year. This is all garlic that I had saved the seeds. This is elephant garlic. This is soft neck variety of garlic. And I had saved the seed for this. And I want to grow a couple different varieties this next year. So if I only have enough to eat and not enough to save the seed garlic to plant for 2024's garden, that's okay because I plan to buy some more seed garlic. I don't know what our plan for the previous owner's garden is long term. We will repurpose it into some other something, but for now I'm grateful that we had a place to plant our garlic and hopefully we'll be getting some strawberries from it. So now we're walking to the side yard. This is just some more landscaping here. We extended the landscaping project all the way down the side of the house here so that we had some more areas for more perennials. And this is where the chickens are here. Here you're going to be able to see the before where it was just a big field, and you'll be able to see the retaining wall that we replaced as well. And you'll be able to see the kind of the before shot of where the garden is going to be too. We were able to get a few more trees in here and some landscaping. And again, I'm going to fill that out with a bunch of perennial flowers. We've got our chicken setup here that is temporary / permanent. My ultimate goal is to get the chickens up here on this ridge. We had water run to this area and a conduit. So up here where the conduit is, there's no electrical yet, but the plan is to have electrical and water here for the chickens. But this is another project that Josh and I are going to tackle ourselves, maybe this summer, but for sure by next summer, the chickens will be up here and this will be a really fun, cool project to do. But again, I am now grateful for the chicken coop we have. We have a place for them. And moving on to this area, this is where there was a retaining wall that was failing and it had to be replaced. So we went ahead and had it replaced with these stones that match the retaining wall in just a minute that we'll get to. All of these bushes right here are blueberry bushes. This area right here is where the grass has been reseeded. There's no sprinkler system or anything on it. I do have a sprinkler there that I've been turning on to hopefully get the seed to germinate. This is just a nice flat area that hopefully I envision kids to play on and for it to just be kind of a fun area to run around because the chickens eventually are going to be up here. this here is our beautiful deer fence. This was something that I was on the fence with, no pun intended, whether it was something we should invest in or not. And Josh was thinking, I think we should make it a priority. And I'm so glad he did, because like I mentioned yesterday, there was a deer that was in our driveway. And so if we didn't have something to protect the garden, it would make a quick snack for the deer. And what we have here is we have a 5-foot panel here where we have the wiring, and deer can jump 6+ feet. And so those panels are not quite big enough to get the height we need. And so what we did is we ran wire. There's 3 wires along the top of the entire deer fence. And that is a way that we can protect this garden without having to put this paneling that high. That would have been a way bigger investment, and I think this looks really beautiful. I'm eventually planning to grow things on this. I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do yet, but that is what it is looking like. From there, we have down here where eventually the greenhouse is gonna go. This is probably at least a year or 2 off in the future. We get 80+ mile-an-hour winds here, and so the greenhouse that we build is going to need to be very substantial. So this is where we are going to build it in the future. But for now, we have some landscape fabric. I need to go and put a little bit more landscape fabric on the back there just so that it doesn't become a weedy mess. But this is future greenhouse, and I'm excited about that. But for now, I'm grateful that I have my grow room, because I was able to start hundreds of seedlings in my grow room. So here is the garden. Here is a panning view of what it looked like before. From where the house is to where I'm standing, we're at about a 10% grade downhill, and that made for some challenges when building a garden on such a big slope, and one of the main reasons we enlisted the help of professionals. We chose this spot on the homestead because it is south facing, and south facing is the ideal direction a garden faces in order to have the maximized sun potential. And one thing that we did is we built out this greenhouse area. We did that even though we knew we weren't going to be building a greenhouse anytime soon, because we didn't want to bring in heavy equipment working on the slope to level an area for a greenhouse after we already had the majority of the after we had the majority of the garden in. So that was just kind of forward thinking there, and it will sit there for a while. But here is another view of the before of the beautiful slope that we have here. It was one of the question marks in my head when we were going to buy this property, if we would be able to build a garden here. And I'm happy to say we were able to build my dream garden, and there are 20 raised beds in this garden. They are 16 feet long by 4 feet wide, and this is the first year of the dream garden, and I cannot wait to see how it flourishes for years and years to come. We are going to do a full garden tour today, giving an update on how all the veggies are doing, but I wanted to come in here and show you our backyard area. Technically, this whole area is the backyard, but Josh and I wanted to create an area in the back off our patio where we can have parties, the kids can play, the dogs can be, and it can feel more like a backyard, not necessarily a farm property. We want to have the best of both worlds, so that is why we created this backyard area. This, my friend, right here is something that I am internally grateful for. Josh and I have had dogs since we got married, and one thing we have not had in the last 4 years is a dog fence. We officially have a dog fence. We have a fenced-in backyard. I'm so grateful that I did not have to choose between lawn and growing food. I was able to have a little bit of both, and I'm so grateful for that, because I just envision parties here, and I love the feel of grass under my feet. Some people love the feel of sand under their feet. That is not my favorite. I love, love, love the texture of grass under my feet. And what we had here before was field grass, and it was very pokey and scratchy. And so I'm so grateful we now have this beautiful lawn that hopefully we will be able to keep alive and have it thrive, so I can put my feet in it whenever I want. So here is a before shot. You're going to see a couple pictures as well. This is January 9th, 2023, and we are currently in June of 2023. So we are looking at winter versus summer, but here is just some before, and you can kind of see where we started to where we ended up. This right here was a previous water feature that was no longer working, so that did need to be removed. Ever since this lawn was put in, the baby and I have come and we sit underneath this big tree in the lawn, and we just enjoy being outside in the evenings once it's cooled off, and we've just enjoyed this so much. I'm just so internally grateful for this, and I'm glad we kept this tree. So there was 2 trees over here that we did have to say goodbye to because they blocked the view. There was a tree right here, and then there was a tree that was way down there by the gate, and this one we kept, and I'm so grateful for it because I have been able to enjoy the shade. This house this way is south facing, so this patio is covered in sun, and so that tree provides some shade. There was a tree right here that we had to cut down, and we replaced it with this tree. There was a really big tree here that we had to cut down, and as soon as we cut the tree down, I was regretting it because that tree produced so much shade for this patio. The reason we cut that tree down was because it was a sugar gum tree, which I didn't know the species or anything like that before. And they produce these really round, pokey balls. And all summer long, I was sweeping them off the patio. They were all in the landscaping. And if we had kept the tree, it would be all in the grass. And I was just thinking of little kids' feet running on this grass. And I didn't want them to have to, or us to have to pick up all those sugar gum, I think they're seed pods, for it to be kind of a safe and comfortable environment for the kids to play around. And so we decided to cut it down. And I was very sad, but as soon as this tree went in, I was okay with that decision because it is going to grow and it's going to produce shade and it's not going to be a mess. So I will need to invest in an umbrella so that in the heat of the summer, we can sit out here and enjoy the patio. So for a couple years, we'll be using umbrellas for the shade, but in the future, we plan to be here for a long time. This tree will hopefully produce some beautiful shade for us. I wanted to show you these 2 pictures one more time because I am going to span and show you what it looks like today so you can have a good reference of the before and the after. Now it is just beautifully landscaped. I am going to fill this in as well with a bunch of perennials. The green stalks looks stunning. I don't know if you've noticed them, but they have filled out beautifully. And now we just have a simple landscaped area here that will be filled out. And then over here, we had those huge laurels, and those are gone. You saw those get removed too. And up here, I planted my rhubarb. So along this area here, I have 4 rhubarb plants and my fig plants in pots that we were able to harvest from the previous homestead. And then, oh my goodness, this is the first one to bloom. Oh my goodness, this is a cosmos. I've never grown cosmos before. And I started those from seed. And look at how good that looks. The petunias look great in the green stalk. The nasturtiums look really good. The beans are looking beautiful. I'm just thrilled with how this turned out. I'm envisioning all the parties here, all the little kids playing here, tons of cousins, and all the fun things happening over the summers and over the years. Just memories being made right here. One happy accident that we did not plan, it just happened this way, is we have this fenced in backyard area, but this fenced in backyard is actually fenced in with the deer fence. So the deer fence wraps around and encloses the entire backyard fence. So for dogs escaping, if they escape, they're not only gonna have to get through this fence and gate, but another gate would have to be left open, this one, for them to get out. So for kids, for dogs, for animals, there is a second layer of protection from them, which, like I said, we did not plan or intend. That just was a happy accident. And I'm so excited about that layer 1 and 2. Oh, and this I want to show you. This was a gift from my mother-in-law. It is a weather station. I can link it down below. We are so excited about this. Josh just got this set up. So where we live, it's a microclimate, and I can look up the weather and my zone but it's not super accurate for actually where we are because of we're high up and it's just a microclimate. And so now that we have that weather station, we are going to be able to get some better data on what the weather is here at our homestead. Now we're going to go through and do a garden tour because you have now seen the entire landscape project buttoned up, or at least what it looks like today. Our homes, our gardens, all those things are never fully done, so this is a work in progress. There is going to be a ton more as this evolves throughout the years, but that is where we are starting today. That was a huge, huge push to get to where we are today, and now we get to look at the fun veggies. Here is where I had a bunch of radishes and I've harvested those, I've replanted, so hopefully soon some radishes will be coming up. We've got lettuce that we've been eating on, and we've got peppers, and then in between the peppers I have some black beans that are planted. I'm already starting to get quite a few good sized peppers on here, which is really awesome. And then on my tomato plants, I am starting to get a ton of tomatoes starting to grow. But something I am noticing, and this is a theme throughout the garden that today I'm going to address, and that is the yellowing of these plants. Some of my plants have been affected more than others, but what I have here, and it took me a long time to come to this conclusion, is I have a pretty serious nitrogen deficiency in my soil. And so I just purchased a 50-pound bag of blood meal, and I'm going to be amending all of my beds. My peppers have what is called leaf drop, and they are losing their bottom leaves, and they're still producing fruit, but these plants do not look like they are thriving. My tomato plants look really great, but my pepper plants are suffering, and my onions are not bulbing up at all. Some of my beds are really affected and some are not so much. You can just see the yellowing on these plants. I re-looked up my soil test, and the biggest deficiency in my soil was nitrogen. And so I kept thinking there maybe was a disease that was going on or something like that. And my conclusion now is that I have a nitrogen deficiency. I amended these beds with the amount of nitrogen recommendation that the soil test kit had recommended, and I just don't think it was quite enough. So I am going to be amending all of these plants today so that hopefully I can get them to green up and look a little bit healthier. One of my beds, which we'll get to, I thought the plants were a goner. I amended them with the fertilizer that I had, and they're starting to green up, and I just went and purchased a bag of just blood meal so that hopefully I can get them to green up even more and we will get a harvest from them. I thought that quite a few of these things were just going to completely die, but I think they're going to bounce back. My tomato plants don't seem to be suffering too much. Those tomatoes are starting to blush, which they are the first tomatoes. And even though these plants look really sad and pathetic, we do have quite a few peppers on these plants. So if I can get them to turn around and green up and get some more growth on them, that will be a win. But you can just see this small little plant, is starting to produce some good sized fruit on it. And my onions are, they have little bulbs on them, but they are heavy feeders. And so they could greatly benefit from a good feeding. But you can just see the tomatoes are looking great. They're growing really well. Again, peppers need some love. The stalk has been blooming for a long time. And then my aster is just starting to bloom. I've never grown aster before, so this is really fun. I've got a couple different variety or colors of stalk here. And they look like they're almost done, but the aster is just starting to come on. Over here is another bed with stalk and aster, and this is peppers, and we have a ton of cayennes. It is incredible the amount of cayenne peppers on these plants, even though they're a little bit stunted. And this is what's happening. So this is not good. The flowers are starting to, fall off the plants. So if you have any other theories on what's happening here, I am all ears. Because if the flowers fall off the plants, this is what produces the fruit. You can see there's a little pepper in there. And if this falls off the plant, it's obviously not going to grow into a pepper. So that is a little bit of a problem. We've got some green beans here. These are contender green beans between the pepper plants. And then the pepper plants that look the healthiest are my Sugar Rush peach peppers. These are so good. I'm excited for those. What are these called? My tomatillos are starting to put on tons and tons of flowers, but they're not getting super tall yet. My tomatoes, this is my Paul Robeson tomato, and it is growing the best out of any of the plants that I have when it comes to tomatoes. And I can see here, we have a little Paul Robeson tomato. I've never grown one of those before, so I'm excited to try that. I have never been one to feed my garden through the growing season. This is the first time this soil has ever been used in a garden. And I just know that this garden is gonna need to be fed throughout the garden season. I am gonna amend these beds at the end of the year. I'm gonna soil test my beds, and then I will soil test them before I plant anything next year. And I will continue to amend these beds. It takes time to build really good soil, and that's what we're working with. So anything that comes out of this garden as a first-year garden, I will be happy with it. Here we have our Atlantic giant pumpkins, and they are starting to vine, which is really exciting. But again, you can kind of see some of the leaves are starting to yellow, so they need a good feeding. Here we've got our banana pumpkins and our sweet meat pumpkins. And then here I planted these just one day. I came out here and planted some more of these melons. These are diced melons. And I also, between these onions, I planted a ton of radishes. So hopefully we'll be getting some radishes, a second succession of radishes here. And I do need to come out and weed because weeds are starting to come up. So I need to obviously get that at the root, but I have been enjoying the landscape fabric because the only areas I need to weed are between where I don't have landscape fabric, and these are all radishes coming up. Another reason I was thinking I have a serious issue in my garden is some things just are not actually getting any bigger. So right here are some of my melons too. These have been in the ground for a good solid month, and they're just not growing. They are probably twice the size they were, but they should be 5 or 6 times the size they were. So here we've got some eucalyptus, and I can show you in another area where the eucalyptus that's in a pot is 4 times that size, and it's because it's in a pot on the patio, and that was soil that I had purchased. It's potting soil, and it had a slow release fertilizer in it, and so it's constantly being fed, and so the plant is growing a lot bigger than what I have in these raised beds. But that's okay. Things are happening. They're just happening a little bit slower, and hopefully after today and they get fed, things will start to take off. This bed I planted out by myself one day, and I have some random plants in here. I don't actually know what all of them are. I know that these are another melon that I got, and I put these in here, but I had some melons sprout in actually my pots up on my patio. I took the soil from the 4-inch pots that I started my squash in, the ones that didn't germinate, and I just dumped that soil into my pots because I didn't want to waste, it was Vermont compost, I didn't want to waste it. And they must have really liked the environment that the pots had to offer because they all germinated. I had like 6 melons or squash. I don't know exactly what the plants are because I dumped the seed and the pot. I thought that they were not good seed, and they germinated. So I dug them up and I planted them there. So time will tell what they are. This is one of our Brassica beds. And I've got, oh my goodness. Okay, so this needs to be harvested today. I've got broccoli. They didn't get very big, but anything's better than nothing. This definitely needs to be harvested today. And then I had some that just died. I don't know what happened there, but we will come out this afternoon and I'll get this broccoli. And then I've got cabbage here. And the red cabbage doesn't seem to be as affected by the moths as the green cabbage. I've been coming out and checking for caterpillars on the underside of the leaves because they are starting to get eaten. And I've been able to find some of them and kill them. And then we've got red cabbage here. And let's get that weed. That's a bad weed. But it makes sense why the red cabbage would not be as affected by the caterpillars. I mean, there are holes in it, but the green caterpillars are going to show up a lot easier on this red leaves. So they must feel more protected on the green leaves. But you can see this is a nutrient deficiency. This green cabbage should not be this purple color. It should be green. Another area where I'm seeing some serious nutrient deficiencies is with my, not these are the cauliflower, and they're done. I've already harvested the cauliflower. But with my cilantro has not grown hardly at all. It's been in the ground for a month and it is barely doing anything. Same with my cucumbers. These cucumbers have been in the ground for a month and they are still itty bitty teeny tiny. This cucumber is starting to grow a little bit, which is good, but I'm still surprised by how small the cucumber is. This is the first zinnia bloom that I'm finding with you. I hadn't seen that one before. And I've got some more cilantro over here and it's doing okay. We've got our zucchini bed and they are starting to put on some baby zucchinis. In here, I have my Sunflower Steve Van Gogh sunflowers with a couple zinnias, but this is one of my Sunflower Steve sunflowers. And here is actually where I have my first yellow squash. And I'm having a problem with ants. These don't seem to be leaf. Oh my gosh, there's a ton in there. Leaf miner ants. They're not eating the leaves. I've never had an issue with ants before in my garden. If you have any recommendations for me, what I should do with the ants, if I should worry about the ants, I've never had an issue. I don't know what to do. They don't seem to be harming the plant, but they're kind of gross because ants kind of always have given me the heebie-jeebies. Let me know if I should just ignore them or if I should be doing something to protect the plants. Coming down from that squash bed, this is my black bean bed. These bean plants were planted the same day as the beans that I planted in the green stalk, and they are half the size of the plants in the green stalk. And so that is what is, and they're the same seed. So this is what's telling me it's a soil issue, and it's not a water issue because we've been watering these really well. When the green beans sprouted, they started growing green, and then I noticed that the leaves started turning yellow, and that's when I researched and assumed they needed to be fed. So I fed them with a liquid all-purpose fertilizer, and I am happy to say the new growth is growing green, so I think they are doing better. And so now that they have been fed, I think we might get a black bean harvest, but only time will tell. I was really sad and I stressed about that for a long time, and I used that bucket to fertilize them with some liquid fertilizer. And then today I'm going to put some more bone meal on them. You can see here is the celery. This should be twice the size and it should not be yellow. And that's another thing. It is a fertilizer issue, I think. We've got some petunias over here, so I'm going to be feeding the celery and these green beans because they are looking like they could use some food. The Roma tomatoes look pretty good. We're getting tomatoes on each one of the plants, starting to grow, which is great. We have some chamomile here for tea. This bed I planted out not that long ago. We've got the peas on the back side. These are some pepper plants I purchased from the store. Here we have some cucumber plants, so hopefully those will grow. We have a second succession of summer squash, more cucumbers here, and more peppers that I purchased at the store. And then I have onions along the outside, and every few onions I planted a basil plant. From the bed we were just in, we are going to come to the corn bed. The zinnias in this bed look so good. I'm so happy with the way the green lushness of them. They look the healthiest out of any of the zinnias I've planted. But the corn is what is shocking me. Corn is a heavy feeder. It needs to be fed, and the corn looks really good to me. We planted some pinto beans from the grocery store, and quite a few of them germinated. Not 100% germination, but probably about 60% of the seed germinated. So hopefully we'll be getting some pinto beans to grow up the corn. Over here, we've got a fairy tale pumpkin that's starting to vine out, which is really exciting. And this is another thing here. So this is a nasturtium plant, and you saw the nasturtium plants up in the green stalk, and these were planted out the same day. And these are itty bitty teeny tiny, so they just need some food, hopefully, to grow. But we're starting to get some tassels and some vining on these plants. So hopefully soon they are going to be vining all throughout the garden. That right there is some of the irrigation stuff Josh has been working on. I'll go more into depth with the irrigation once Josh has it all in. We've been tweaking it and messing around with it, and we haven't found the perfect solution. But there is water in each one of these beds, and I can turn it on with the push of a button. And so when we have that finalized, I'll go into that, but that's what that box is there. In this bed, let me show you where I can really see some nutrient deficiency, or at least that's what I think this is. I could be completely off base, and if you guys have any recommendations, I would greatly appreciate it. The reason I think it's a nutrient deficiency is because it seems to be happening across the board in all of the beds, and where I have the same plants I planted out the same day in the beds versus in the green stock or in a planter, they just look completely different. So I don't think it's the plant themselves, I think it's what they're trying to grow in. And this bed is showing a huge sign of it. So Memorial Day weekend, I went grocery shopping and I bought some starts that were on sale. And I got red cabbage, which some of it is sun scald. That's what I think this is it sunburn. And I also got green cabbage. And can you see how absolutely not green these cabbages are? This was a second succession of cabbage I wanted to plant. And from what I understand, this purpling of the leaves, I think, is a nutrient deficiency. Here I have a third succession of radishes and some more lettuce, and that should produce enough lettuce into the summer for me. Our peas are looking really good. They're starting to flower, which I'm excited about. And then our Jardel pumpkin is starting to grow and vine out, which is really exciting. Coming down to this last bed, down here, or the last row, I should say, there's 5 beds in this row, but a lot of them are the same thing. We have onions. And one thing that I did do with this onion bed and the next onion bed is I planted, well, these are weeds. This is why I'm loving the landscape fabric, because I don't have to weed them. But between each one of the rows of onions, I planted carrots. So I have carrots all along this bed going down, and I am going to have to come in here and thin them, and I need to get all these weeds. That's what I'll do later this afternoon. That's a butternut squash that's looking really good. The onions just are not getting very big. These onions should be 3 times the size they are, but I will be happy with anything we get this year. This bed is another onion bed. Now this is something new. I planted along the whole entire back side of this bed. I planted sunflower Steve's Van Gogh sunflowers, and I planted them very close together, because what I understand is if you plant sunflowers really close together, they're going to grow a lot smaller, which my growing conditions this year, they probably would grow small anyway. But I wanted them smaller so that I could harvest them and put them in a vase, and I didn't want these huge sunflowers. So that's why I did that. So those are the plants back there. Those are all sunflowers. So right here, I probably should thin those. But we again have carrots. These are these little green plants right here are all carrots between the onions. More cosmos. Again, look how small this Cosmo plant is compared to the Cosmo plant that I showed you up in that pot. Here we have potatoes. The potatoes do not seem to be minding this soil whatsoever. They are growing and they are even flowering. So in about a couple months, we will have homegrown potatoes again. Now this bed seems to be thriving really well. We've got our Cinderella pumpkins here. We've got our Long Island cheese pumpkins, and these zinnias, I planted zinnias in the inside of this bed too, and they are looking really, really good. All of these squash. This is our fairy tale pumpkin again, and here it's so yucky. You see all those ants? I do not like that at all. They seem to be loving my squash plants, and I've never had that before. These are a white zucchini, and they're starting to put some zucchinis on, so it won't be long, hopefully, and we are going to be having some zucchini for dinner. There's another one. And then here is our last bed, and these are more potatoes, and they don't seem to be suffering too much from the soil. And in this bed, I have a volunteer pumpkin there, And I have a volunteer pumpkin there, and I have some volunteer sunflowers there. Those are some sunflower Steve sunflowers again. Those volunteers are again from where I took 4-inch pots that I thought that the seed didn't germinate in the pots. I didn't want to waste the soil, so I dumped them out here. Same with these sunflowers. I had some sunflowers that I didn't think germinated. Well, they didn't germinate. I thought the seed was bad. It doesn't seem to be bad. They just didn't like the conditions I originally planted them in, it looks like. So that is the entire mid-June garden tour along with the landscape project buttoned up. I am so grateful for you taking time out of your day to spend time with me in my garden. I am gonna go change and I'm gonna come back out here, and there are some things that need to be addressed out here. So I'm really looking forward to spending the afternoon out here. It is overcast all day. It's not even supposed to get in the 70s, so it's gonna be the perfect day to spend quite a few hours out in the garden. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.